Hey guys, welcome to the very first Joseph X81 Does Politics video. So, in today's video, we will be discussing the current situation around election season here in Northern Ireland, or the north of Ireland, and what exactly is going to come up. Particularly mentioning, all the tension that will probably happen, the likes of, well, politicians get a little bit hot-headed, obviously, and pretty much all that type of stuff, especially if you're thinking quite hateful and sectarian. Another thing we'll be discussing in the video will be the likes of the European Union at the minute, the current state of it, and of course Emmanuel Macron, the President of France, taking over as leadership bid in the European Union itself. President Macron has pretty much got the power now in the EU. He wants to take this opportunity to try and increase the EU sovereignty and more, and we'll include a bit more detail on that later in the video. And finally, will CANZUK actually happen? That is one of the most questions that has been asked over the past, well, quite a few months actually, and that's something we will hopefully be able to investigate in this video. Okay, so to begin is the north of Ireland, or Northern Ireland. At the minute, the political situation has always been complicated. It is the north after all. To everyone, Northern Ireland, north of Ireland, it doesn't really matter. No matter where you're from, Derry, Londonderry, it really doesn't matter. But one thing I would like to mention in this is that I will not tolerate any type of sectarian or hate comments. Just leave it at that. If you're bitter, sweet, just leave it, because honestly, we're all in the same boat here. We all live in the same place. We might as well just, I call it Ireland, you might call it Northern Ireland. It's entirely of your own preference, of course. Now, the way the political system is here at the minute is obviously quite different. It's quite distressing. It's quite, well, quite a lot of things really. However, one thing that I would like to add and mention is, of course, the elections in May for the Northern Ireland Assembly. There are 90 MLAs, or members of the Legislative Assembly, in Northern Ireland as of present. This number increases I have in front of me here too, and I have enough for a while. These 90 members represent all different constituencies right across the north, elected by a vote for each different jurisdiction and electoral ward. These MLAs represent their constituents via obviously being elected. They take this seat in the Assembly, which is located in Stormont in East Belfast, and these MLAs do what represents their constituents best, from what, writing into them, writing letters or emails, or constituency clinics where they write in or call in, especially via social media these days, especially during lockdown. That happened quite often. Whenever the offices were actually shut and people couldn't actually go down anymore, and this has continued even outside of lockdown because everybody moved more digital ever since then. But in addition to this, these MLAs are, of course, they are doing quite a good job. But essentially, each MLA is changed every election, every 4 years, on the first Thursday in May. These are to, of course, make a democracy, everything a democratic vote, and ensure that each constituent is represented by the correct person. Of course, there will be the likes of snap elections, or something like a party would have to nominate a different type of person to take place of an MLA of a former person. An example of this will be Fran McCann, the former MLA for West Belfast, where Aisling Riley was nominated to take over the place in the seat, where the constituents were indeed happy and were okay with that, for her to take over Fran McCann's place, as well as Fran McCann also agreeing that to himself. Not that Fran McCann has left either, because most MLAs who do leave, no matter what party they join, they will remain part of their party, and they will still actually talk to their constituents, such as like a councillor, for example, which is a more laid back job, or for perhaps they may just continue to help out with the likes of elections for their colleagues who are trying to run as MLA in that area. So currently those 90 MLAs are going to be reshuffled in May, where the Assembly election is going to take place, and therefore all 90 new MLAs will be elected. There's a chance for re-elected, those new ones being introduced into areas, for ones who are only new parties, new to areas, and in this case, these many areas don't really change their politicians because, again, this is the North. People just relatively keep the same party in power for quite a number of years. We've seen that in quite a few examples with the likes of the DUP, SNP, and Sinn Féin. I think also more recently People Before Profit, those haven't really changed those seats. Seats change depending on the amount of votes in a area. So, for example, they may choose an MLA for quite a big area because there are four, say, it's just only a rough example, 4 or 5, say, electoral wards in the major electoral ward, which will be Belfast West. Those 4 mini ones would be, for example, Lower Falls, Lower Falls, I believe more up the road. I don't really know the exact names, but you kind of get what I mean. Each major area is made up of like small, or like 4 or 5 areas or something, for example, and depending on how many vote from each one in a actual electoral ward itself or jurisdiction, they will all amount up and show up the total so everybody is represented correctly. And this includes councillors, and if the council elections come up, however, those are different dates depending on both your council and, of course, if the political parties feel happy with it. Furthermore, people are elected differently. They may be elected because constituents may claim that they're former MLA and sometimes even MP, but in this case, we'll not talk about too much about that at the minute because there is actually a thing going on where they're going to reintroduce double jobbing, which I'll get to more in a second, which was going for quite a while, by the way. But essentially, parties just nominate the people who believe have the most backing up of their campaigns and the people who support the most, and the party thinks they've been doing quite a lot, that they should be able to participate in the upcoming election on behalf of the party, representing that area for their constituents. Therefore, they're able to participate in the election, put their name down on the poll, so people can then vote for them in their area whenever they vote for, say, the likes of Sinn Féin or SDLP. Another one would be just recurring MLAs, so someone who's already been an MLA will most likely have more chance of just being put back down on the register again for someone to just vote for them. And that has happened on a number of cases, and of course is entirely 100% understandable because they have more trust and more backup. But again, there is always a call for, say, introducing more people, new people, especially young people or people who just never been represented as such an MLA or MP before, especially those who have been councillors. I do know quite a few councillors who have been councillor for quite a number of years and are only starting to get asked to be MLA now because of their backing. To become an MLA, I believe that the most probable thing there is indeed introducing, become councillor and introducing these new schemes maybe in your community or your area or for like wherever you're a councillor of, such as like events and all that type of thing. That would all jazz up like your reputation, both in your political party to increase your chances of them as asking you to kind of come forward and be asked to be MLA and participate in the upcoming election whenever that may be, which again, first Thursday every May every 4 years, which of course is quite democratic in my opinion. I believe there should be a bit more closer each election because that way it'd be a bit more of a democracy, but to be fair, it does make sense. We don't have everybody run around like a penguin every 2 to 3 years sitting there signing off the futures essentially, because you never know who they end up trusting, and plus we kind of want these seats to be kept for quite a number of years in time for people to get a chance to actually do something, because people who may start a job might overlap whenever they lose their seat maybe, unless if they don't get re-elected or someone else comes in new or they decide to retire or decide to resign or move to a different political party, therefore they will be removed from that seat. Well, I believe so, don't get me on that part, because that is actually kind of the only sector at the minute that is a bit messed up, because if you move political party you can't keep your seat and represent a different party, but then again they didn't vote for that party, so it can mess up a few things. But I think that just relates on the assembly and executives kind of decision that they both make in the chamber, and if they believe that what everyone's right and it is right for the people there, then it should be fine to either stem power or be removed and wait for the next election, or if the two parties make an agreement then it can swap over, and if the people sign, that's it. And I guess that is kind of how democracy works here in Northern Ireland.